Here it's our great honor and pleasure to have Dr. Sergei Karganov with us. He's a topmost leading scholar in international relations, not just in Russia, but all over the world. And let me read his brief bio here and to our viewers and the audience. He is a scientific supervisor of faculty of international economics and foreign affairs. And he also used a dean of higher school of economics and honorary chairman of the presidium of the Council of Foreign Relations and Defense Policy in Russia. Since 1990s, Dr. Karganov was a member of the Presidential Council of Russia. His scientific research and interests include Soviet and Russia foreign and defense policies, international political economy, security, Greater Eurasian area, United States of America and Europe, and new global order. That's a person we have now to discuss. Today we're going to focus on basically three major issues. Number one, of course, is the US invasion and the kidnap of President Maduro and his wife. And second is the future prospect of Ukraine war, which I believe Dr. Karganov has a lot to tell us. And last but not least, from Russia's perspective, how US-China relationship is heading, given what's going on between the two powers right now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We have been friends for so many years. I'm so happy to.
Same here. Yeah. We're good friends for many years, and I have learned a great deal from working with Dr. Karganov. Now, my first question is that what do you think about the future prospect and about the impact of this? I think is a violent intrusion of Venezuela and the kidnapping of the president Maduro and his wife.
Well, first of all, I do not know, as nobody knows, because we do not know the truth. There is something phony about this kidnapping. Yeah. I mean, somebody. It looks like a staged event by event by whom is yet unclear. Clearly, American security services, but who helped them, we do not know. But one thing is absolutely clear, and that is that Trump and America is trying to concentrate on the Western Hemisphere. Yep. And it has the process of withdrawing from the global role. Yep. Started actually about 15, 17 years ago, but we didn't notice. Most of us didn't notice that.
So as early as about 15 years ago?
Yes, 2 or 6, 2 or 7. Okay. Even almost 20. Okay. After they, but it was in the internal discussion, and we saw that. And by the way, even President Obama came with a mandate, making America first again, but the globalist group around him didn't allow him to do that.
The establishment.
So now the bad thing is that abduction of Maduro and piracy on the streets is totally criminal. It's absolutely. The good part of it is that Americans are withdrawing into the Western Hemisphere. Yeah. There will be problems there, but they are gradually becoming a normal great power rather than a global hegemon. They are stopping to pretend to be a global hegemon. So it's a kind of two sides of a coin. So of course one could only detest such unbelievable crime-looking events like abduction of a president, of an elected president of a big country. And of course it should be condemned, and hopefully somehow we could save Maduro and his wife. But it is a reflection of a much deeper tendency in American foreign policy, which is positive. and now it is, I've been writing for many, many years that we have to create conditions to help America to withdraw from its global role without staging a war.
Yeah, I remember you wrote the disordered or no order decline of the United States is danger for all of us, right? I think that you're right. Actually, this kind of withdrawal from the so-called hegemonic role in the world started actually about 10 or 20 years ago because the United States simply cannot support this kind of system or alliance system. Right now, Donald Trump not only abandoned. I agree with you that right now, United States simply cannot support the so-called hegemonic system it has tried to maintain after 1991, but still, I think you're right. This kind of decline started actually a long time ago. You said in 2006 or in 2007. Actually, 2008 may be the turning point. That's a huge crisis.
The decline.
The decline.
Decline of the American leading and Western leading hegemony in the world.
Yeah.
Started in the 1960s.
1960s. Wow.
And when and it was very evident at that time. Nobody at that time seriously thought about that, but some people thought. Even in the United States, when the United States started to lose when the Soviet Union reached some kind of a nuclear parity, it undermined the foundation of Western dominance in the world affairs, and then American dominance, which had lasted for 500 years. And then all of a sudden, and in the 60s and the 70s, America losing wars, there were crisis after crisis, oil crisis, etc. Then it partially recuperated, but only partially. But then Soviet Union collapsed and opened up unbelievable opportunities. So for in front of the West and the United States, and it seemed that the decline has reversed.
Yeah.
But it reversed only for 15 years. Then Soviet Union, Russia, started to reclaim its positions in the world, rearm, and then simultaneously China started to become the great power. Because the Americans, when they were in this euphoria after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they made several fantastic mistakes. I didn't believe, I was very much part of the American elite at that time. I knew all of them, and I didn't believe my eyes what they were doing. They were helping China to become eventually the number one. At that time, they thought that China will become, while growing in a capitalist way, will become democracy. And democracy means that you are badly run. Not you are badly run. And then you just become an American ally. There was mistake by mistake. And then, of course, things grossly exacerbated when still in this euphoria they started to several invasions and lost again. That is Afghanistan and Iraq. After that, the withdrawal really restarted. It was end of 2007, 2008, and the crisis. That was where the American elite deep inside decided to start to withdraw. But of course,
I basically agree with you that it's actually United States began to be in trouble in 1960s and 1970s. The kind of very vivid example is the loss of Vietnam War. And but they kind of rejuvenized a little bit, largely because the collapse of Soviet Union, disintegration of Soviet Union. After that, I always told my Western colleagues, they think, especially Europeans, they think Russia is a failed state. I said, no, Russia is not a failed state. Russia is a new re-emerging great power. you take that totally wrong. Of course, the rise of China is another factor to turn the situation around. But here I would take a little bit issue with you. I don't think China's rise is all because of help of the United States. China's rise is because China adopted a right policy, right approach, reform and openness, right? China tried to integrate the kind of system you call the Western system. By doing that, China grew from inside. But of course, they have a wishful thinking that they can have a peaceful kind of evolution that China will join their side. That part, I agree with you, totally wrong. Wishful thinking.
I completely agree with you on your assessment, but I will give you another aspect of it. China, of course, grew because it was allowed to grow, but also it grew because of the fact that Soviet Union provided a security umbrella when even in the United States they started to understand that China is becoming the future leader. They never thought of really attacking China, even when China was still relatively military weak, not anymore.
Yeah,
because simultaneously Americans did another unbelievable strategic mistake, and since that time I am looking at my American former friends and now colleagues with kind of intellectual disgust. They allowed China and Russia were closing together because we're neighbors, we have a good relation, but they pushed us together into unbeatable alliance. And of course, not a formal alliance. And now, and what has happened during the last 15 years is that this quasi or semi-alliance between Russia and China has doubled Chinese overall strategic power and tripled Russian overall strategic power. And that was a fantastic, unbelievable mistake of our Western competitors.
Let me go through it in the history. I know as a Chinese remembered very well how the former Soviet Union helped China to build up a very comprehensive industrial system, which is a foundation for China's future development. But I think as the former Soviet Union also made a serious mistake by overexpanding. For example, the invasion of Afghanistan is a huge mistake, and that also gives a kind of a quasi-alliance between United States and China. I think in the 1980s, that's the best time between United States and China because two of them work with each other against Soviet Union in Afghanistan. That's we all know, right?
Yes, I remember
that's a turning point of Soviet Union.
Soviet Union did mistakes on its own, but it's not only overextension, it was arrogance. Because arrogance of Khrushchev vis-a-vis Mao, because Mao, at first we were very friendly in the 50s, and also, of course, a very important role played an episode when Khrushchev and other Russian leaders denied helping Russia with China with nuclear weapons. That was also a mistake.
But China got it anyway.
Anyway, but it got it anyway, but later, and that's why it had a weak strategic position for many, many years. So if we would have helped them, say in the late 50s, I mean, then China would have had a much stronger strategic position.
But that's history.
It wouldn't look for a rapprochement with the United States. It wouldn't need it.
Yeah, that will be no so-called Nixon visit to China. But anyway, history is such that we're not perfect. We all make mistakes. But in the final analysis, whose mistake is the biggest, right? I think the United States is making, in my view, the history I can remember in modern history since World War II, United States of America is making the biggest mistake. First, after Soviet Union's disintegration, United States believe they are the master of the world. That's why they put forward the so-called globalism strategy, try to globalize according to the American model. I still remember globalization of values, universal value as American value, and globalization of democracy. We have color revolution, we have Arab Spring, we know the result now, globalization of market economy and globalization of free trade. And China, of course, rise up. And Soviet Union, former Soviet Union collapsed, but Russia re-emerged as a great power. That changed the entire situation. Coming back here, let's go back still here, is that I agree with you that the United States has been declining, and to such extent, it has abandoned, because the so-called hegemony positions abandoned the kind of global world policeman has withdrawn to the Western Hemisphere. It's not that they're willing to, but they have to. I remember you have a very famous line. You said, the decline of the United States is not a bad news, but disorderly decline, I call you, would be a disaster. So do you think that this invasion of Venezuela is a kind of a reflection or expression of disorderly decline, or still orderly decline? Because attack of Venezuela is not because the United States is powerful, but because it's weakness. It shows weakness.
Let's put it this way. I mean, it is Russia and China should work together to help United States to perform an orderly decline. It is in our interest, and also in the interest of the United States, because United States overextended itself, and by the way, it happened almost by a chance. Before the Second World War, the United States was a powerful economic power, but it was almost a nobody on international affairs. And then, because of the quarrel and all these unbelievable things which have been happening again and again in Europe, United States, without much capital investment, became the global power. It was an unwilling global power. I mean, I remember very well, in reading American documents of the 40s, most of the American elites at that time didn't want to become the global powers.
Yes.
Still, but they were given the opportunities because Europe collapsed. So Soviet Union was weak, and relatively weak, and so I mean it was kind of sucked into the position. Then the colonization started with the help of Soviet Union, then the help of the United States. So the United States were spread all over. And at that time, it was controlling most of the institutions, so it was relatively profitable. But with the change of correlation of forces, with the strengthening of the Soviet Union, the strengthening of other countries of the global south and China, they saw that the system doesn't work for them anymore. And that's why they started already 15 to 20 years ago to work against this system, to destabilize the system of its globalism. Remember that they started to undermine free trade. Yeah. They started to impose sanctions. That was against their vision of global dominance, because they saw that they could not completely control it. So now we have to help them to get to a proper place in the world system, which is not necessarily, but at this juncture they are retreating with sometimes with dignity, sometimes without dignity, and sometimes are knowingly creating chaos, trying to create in the places where they live. Yeah. In the Middle East, you see, I mean, support of this ugly war in Israel against neighbors. Then playing some other games. Then at the beginning, they were supporting the Ukraine war, and they were the main driver. The
Biden administration,
because the idea was that we should create a problem for Russia, and we should drive a wedge between Russia and Europe. And they, by the way, here they succeeded. But now, when they saw that Russia is serious, and so Russia could even fighting harder and harder, and even go nuclear. Even during Biden administration, they started to withdraw from this war.
Yes.
So now everybody talks about Trump withdrawal.
No, it's Biden.
Biden started.
Yeah, I still remember that.
I was participant of that process, active participant, and very few people understood that during the Biden administration they even stopped saying that they would go to help Europeans if there is a big war in Europe. So they were withdrawing already.
Okay, let's go to the point of this. I remember that on March 26, 2022, after 1 month or two start over, the Biden said in Poland, he said, the purpose of this war is to make that man go. That means President Putin has to go. And 1 month later, the Austin, his then the defense minister, Secretary of Defense said, the purpose of this go is to weaken Russia to such a point, to such extent, it can no longer do the kind of thing they did to Ukraine. But only about months later, on May 31st, Joe Biden published the article in New York Times, which has 4 red lines. The first is that NATO and the United States were not directly involved in the war. The second, he says this war is not about regime change. He swallowed his own words. And third is that United States and NATO would never ever initiate any attack on Russia until Russia attacks them first. Last, which is very evidently, he's withdrawing, like you said. He said, we are not encouraging or enabling Ukraine to strike beyond its borders. So it's withdrawing, right? But I want to go a little bit further history about how this all started. I remember you warned Americans many years ago, I still remember very clearly in 2011, 2012, you said, look, you guys are pushing us to the corner, Russia into the corner. You are going to have it. That's what you said, that we're cornered. And I think that the turning point, in my view, in 2008, 2008, 2 major issues happened. For the Russian part, first, Ukraine and Georgia officially applied to join NATO. That's a red line. And second, United States deployed anti-missile system in Poland and Czech. That's a red line being crossed. That's why we have a Georgia war in August. That's Putin's fighting back. I think after that, there's to no return point between Russia and the West. And on this side, we have a major financial crisis, 2008. And the United States realized how powerful China has become because China helped them to get out of this crisis. And that's why when Obama came to power, very soon he put forward rebalancing policy, began to contain China. I think that's a turning point. But now, since we are here in the Ukraine war, and I remember you published a long article in 2022, September 2022, at Russia in Global Affairs. You said what really matters is not to defeat Ukraine. What really matters is to destroy the Western international system, because that system has become an instrument for United States to maintain its pretentious hegemony and also to do damage to Russia, to the Slavic nation. That's why he said this is an onslaught led by Russia against Western system, and that system has to go. Do you still hold this point?
Yes, and I still hold, of course, hold this point, and I still believe that we're progressing well. First of all, we succeeded. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, let's put it this way. I was unhappy with our policies. I thought that we should have started earlier, not in 2022. I have been behind the scenes. I have been criticizing my government of not acting decisively earlier.
Yeah.
But when we started, I mean, what we have already achieved is that by raising the bids, now we generally pushed the United States out of this war. And I could give you a few examples, if you wish, how we did that. I mean, when they started to understand that Russia could escalate to nuclear level in Europe, Biden never stopped talking about supporting Europe at all. He said in many interviews, he never said that if Europe is attacked, the United States will come to help, which was against, by the way, the letter of NATO treaty. And they started to growingly withdraw. Then and now the United States is withdrawing even further, of course, with all kinds of fluctuations, because it still hopes to create problems for Russia, create problems for Europe, and also they want to. Some of Americans want to continue this war because it's very profitable for them. I mean, they sell arms to Europe, and they rob Europe. I mean, outright, because of the flows of investments, the flows of trade, etc. But now the aim is to, a Russian aim, which I state openly, is to crush European will to resist. Europe has been the source of all troubles of humanity. I mean, in spite of the fact that we are partially European. I mean, Europe is the source of racism, colonialism, serial genocides, world wars, and now it's driving to the third world. It should be pushed from the world scene as far, or most of it, as far as away. So because it is the source of
so becoming the source
Europeans
are deserving who
so
they are right
they
now.
deserve to be pushed away. That's, I hope, is a long-term, should be a long-term strategy for Russia. But of course the things are much more complicated. I mean, strategically I'm openly saying that the aim of Russia should be to destroy the will of European elites and to oust them. Not change, not imposing any regime change, but to create systemic preconditions that these elites will be thrown.
On this part, you're in line on the same page with Donald Trump. He basically said those establishments in Europe.
Though I must say I did that before.
You did. He's agree with you.
No. I hope with all my sins, I'm not responsible for Donald Trump.
Okay, but I want to go back to a very special point. That is, you said when Russia raised the bet, raise the ante in the war, basically escalate, even go to nuclear if necessary, United States back up and never support Europe. But as you know that as soon as war started, I think in April or May 2022, there's a huge debate in the Americans, among the American so-called strategic thinker. That debate was published in the April-May issue of 2022. You know, your good friend Richard Haas, Charles Kupchan, Myron Schlaughter, Stephen Moore, all of them, they said that the enlargement of NATO is a cardinal error. Charles Kupchan said. They said to defeat Russia is a wishful thinking. The argument is very simple. They said you cannot defeat Russia nuclear power because if you try to defeat Russia, you go into a nuclear war, which means the end of war is the end of all of us. We cannot win. A second point I think is quite strategic is that if we defeat Russia, Europeans are gone because United States want Europe to rely on them, and Russia have provide a kind of threat. Like you said, Europe can never handle itself. So they have to rely on NATO, rely on United States. That's why United States can keep control of Europe. That's the point. That's why they said enlargement of NATO is mistake. Defeat Russia is wishful thinking. For Americans' own interest, we should keep Russia there. But Americans want Russia weak, but still standing. But Europeans, of course, have another issue. But now from this point of view, and you think to what extent Russia is going to push, to put pressure on, given such a strategic opportunity provided by Donald Trump, provided by the decline of the United States, to what extent is Russia to push the Europeans, especially those establishments in Europe, that Russia will think that the job is done?
My advice, open and hidden, It's very simple. We have to change European elites, but not in an American way, not through a color revolution, but we have to crush their will to fight Russia, because now European elites are totally broke, morally, economically, politically. I mean, they are,
and even militarily.
And even militarily. I mean, they are, and they need this war to substantiate their existence in power. They have no moral right to rule these countries.
Yeah.
So we have to defeat them so that eventually they will be thrown over. This thin layer of Euro-globalists will be thrown away. The problem with Europe will be that when this thin layer of the Brussels quote-unquote bureaucracy is finally pushed away, unfortunately in Europe the forces which will come will be neo-fascist. So Europe will continue to be a problem, but will be a lesser problem.
But I know in the history, Russia has changed Europe's future dramatically and fundamentally. One is defeat of Napoleon, another defeat of Hitler, right? Do you think there will be another kind of repetition of history like that?
I'm calling on our leader to repeat, but for the last time, so that Europe would never recuperate. Because Europe every 100 years, or less, sometimes twice in a century, unleashes a global war. Europe should be pushed as a major actor from the world arena. That's what I call a strategic aim of Russia.
You should be pushed back to where they belong to.
Where they used to belong to.
Used to belong.
In the 14th, 13th century, United States, with my great respect, should be pushed somewhere to the position where they belonged, say, in the 30s or 20s or partly even 40s. And that is to a very strong, powerful economic power, dominant in the Western Hemisphere and with global reach, of course, but Europe should be pushed away from the.
But you cannot push out of the global village. That's still part of the global community, right?
And part of Europe should join the greater Eurasia project. The Southern Europe and the Central Europe will. When this Europe collapses, I mean, hopefully without a big war, the countries of the Southern Tier will be drifting, and Central European countries like Hungary, like Austria, like many others, will drift to Eurasian, what I call Greater Eurasia.
Greater Eurasia is almost like former Soviet Union?
No, it is Greater Eurasia, is China, is India, is everything. I mean, they will become part of the peaceful Greater Eurasia. By the way, do you remember that in, I think, 12-13, we were having a conference, I think in Tokyo.
Yes, I remember
that. And that's where the idea, the phrase, Greater Eurasia was coined.
And the Japanese I still remember Japanese did not get it. They did not say, this Great Eurasia is said, China, Russia, India, it's beyond their comprehension. And
no, but still, I mean, everybody started to repeat that, and it was just thrown away into the crowd, but immediately, I mean, it spread, and then eventually it became the policies of Soviet Union, of Russia, I'm sorry, and then China embraced it.
I always argue that the so-called European Central World is a kind of abnormal after industrialization, because after industrialization, all of a sudden we'll see great powers all around Atlantic, the Great Britain, Germany, France, and so on and so forth. But now looking back and looking at this situation, none of the Atlantic countries is a global power. They're all gone. The so-called global power right now, China, Russia, United States, India, are all in this part, except United States in the Western Hemisphere, all the other three, including even Brazil, South Africa, are all in, you said, Eurasian-centered, this big geopolitical map right now. I think this rise, in my view, is inevitable. But here comes the situation I really want to talk about. From your point of view, how should this Ukraine war end?
Well,
because it will end eventually, right?
The war with Europe, I call it the Russian now. Russian war with Europe, not with the United States participation, but in Ukraine. It's not Ukrainian war. It's not about Ukraine.
Yeah, you said that
so,
in 2002.
For the
September.
time being, unfortunately, against my advice, Russia, for humanitarian reasons, have been unwilling to climb the ladder of nuclear escalation. And I think it is it was a mistake. Not necessarily that we should use nuclear weapons, but we should have climbed earlier. We have started to climb including after my criticism. But still, and so we decided to fight this war in an old way, and that is, big territorial battles. That was a mistaken strategy. We are winning, tactically, operationally, but we wouldn't be able to win, there strategically. We will win tactically, operationally, and we're winning. So what will happen now is probably a piecemeal solution. Piecemeal solution, which has been offered by President Trump, and it is very hard to decline it because actually it is a nice-looking offer, and continuing. Of course, it could be blocked by Europeans. It could be blocked by what we call Ukrainians, but they are puppets. But now it is very hard to decline it. Though my ideal solution would be to go further. So, but it will be a stopgap operation. After that, either we shall be able, by climbing the ladder of escalation, maybe with the help of Americans, to persuade Europeans to get out of this game. If not, and they will continue to fuel the war.
But what do you mean by get out of this game?
The war will restart.
So the Europeans will leave Ukraine alone?
No. Europeans, at this juncture, these Europeans want to have Ukraine as a military stronghold against Russia. It will never happen. So if they continue, then we will restart the war. But this time, I'm pretty sure, nuclear deterrence will be used much more actively. And interestingly enough, recently, and I'm very happy about that, because I knew about the debate which is going under the table or within community. President Putin said that if Europeans would really start to participate in the war, there will be no Europe. There will be nobody to talk to, and that means that he meant, annihilation. I hope he didn't mean that exactly, but my scenario has been always that we have to prepare, in case of great need, first to show, in 3 or 4 ways our resolve, and then to stack, if needed, if they continue this war, to attack European military targets with conventional weapons, and if they return, then the first wave of nuclear weapons should be used. United States will never come to the rescue of Europe, it's for sure, because that has always been the policy, unspoken policy of the United States. But I do not want that to happen. We shall win the win, quote unquote. But I don't want that to happen, because using nuclear weapons and killing hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of innocents is a sin. So I hope that we will be able to persuade these brainless idiots, I am openly saying that, who are now running Europe, that they have to stop and withdraw. Or they should be swept away by their populations, but the populations are now brainwashed, and the big problem with Europe is that they stopped because of 70 years of peace. They have developed what I call strategic parasitism. They are not afraid of war because they have been protected by United States
for too long,
and by the Soviet Union. So we blocked each other, and we gave them a period of peace, and they forgot what war was first, and they forgot about their sins. Because they are the greatest sinners in history of humanity. Most of the worst wars were unleashed by Europeans.
So they have a good life for too long time. They forgot how brutal, how bloody a war really is. But let me push you a little bit further. If the wars ended as you expected, will have a consequences include the collapse of European Union. The Brussels could not hold it anymore. That's first. And second, a minor issue is that, as you know, that you've been criticized by a lot of people, including some of the scholars in China, said you are too, I quote, irresponsibly tangle the nuclear weapons. Nuclear deterrence should be a very serious issue. But from Dr. Karakanok's words, it can be triggered too easily, first. And second, if that happened, the two European powers, the British and the French, also have nuclear weapons. That would trigger a kind of disaster maybe beyond our control. How do you take the 2 years? First, do you think the Brussels can still hold it together if the war ended the way you want? Or how about this nuclear deterrence?
First of all, I do not want a nuclear war to be unleashed, because I say and I pray that it would not be unleashed. I hope that deterrence will work. But the problem is that it doesn't work. And that's why we have to...
It failed to work. That's why we have the war here.
It's failing to work.
Yes.
And we have to climb the ladder.
Okay. You said raise the
ladder. So if, God forbids, Russia will have to punish these European busters, I'm sorry to say, we shall quote unquote win this war, but that will be a Pyrrhic victory morally. First. Second, the problem now is that we could deal with the French or the Brits easily. Easily. Imagine just they are, blah blah blah. They have, they are totally dependent on the United States. Imagine, so as simple as that. If war goes on, and we are forced to punish some of our European enemies, then would the French or the Brits, in spite of their blah blah now, will try to send a nuclear missile to Russia, and then be absolutely swept away from the earth? There will be no Britain and no France within several minutes. So that will not probably happen. But of course, playing with this game is dangerous. Yeah. And we have together with you, together with others, work out a new theory, a new practice of nuclear deterrence, because the previous theory and practice did not work. If personal people like myself and Henry Kissinger or anybody would have talked about this matter 15 years ago, they would never in our worst imagination allow for a war in Ukraine, because it's a war of nuclear powers against supernuclear power. It was unthinkable, but because of this lack of fear of war, especially in Europe, and degradation of elites, especially in Europe, but partially here too, during the Biden administration, they unleashed a war. Though I have been telling them for 25 years, don't get close to Ukraine, or there will be a war.
Yes, I on that part, I think Donald Trump is right. Joe Biden has started irresponsibly, started the war with very short-sighted that he cannot handle, and that's his problem. But let me push for two issues here. If, like you said, the current European establishment be swept away, and if the Southern and Eastern Europe will join in what you call Eurasia community, then, in my view, then the European Union will have to collapse.
It will have to collapse.
Yeah, but then we are going to have a very chaotic, even turmoil Europe. Is that good for Russia?
Not very good, but we have lived with that.
I mean, can Russia handle a chaotic,
yes,
disorganized
yes,
Europe?
Yes, it can.
You can.
Absolutely.
Working with Germans or French?
First of all, we should not allow for remilitarization of Europe.
Okay.
And we will not allow. Okay. Because they are now talking about remilitarization, about Germany becoming the first European army, the number one European army. I said, what? Germany again? After unleashing 2 world wars, becoming, that means that Germany will cease to exist. I'm criticizing Stalin for being not agreeing to the so-called Morgenthau plan, which was offered after the Second World War to divide Germany into a few small states.
But in those days, it is Gorbachev and Yeltsin that supported reunification of Germany. I remember in those years, all the major powers against reunification. Only Soviet Union and Russia supported reunification.
Unfortunately, we made a strategic mistake, and also it was a time of weakness. It was a time of weakness. And also at that time, nobody believed that Germany would start to be against revanchists. Germany was looking at a peaceful country, and also European Union at its inception and during the first 3-4 decades of its existence was more or less a union for peace. But eventually, with all these crises and all these failures, it started to need war. So now it is becoming not a military organization, but it is becoming much more aggressive than even NATO, which is a military organization.
Yeah, this leads to another issue I really want to
So
ask.
Europe in any case will be a challenge. So how to deal with it, we know from history.
Okay.
If needed, we will handle it.
2 specific questions for you, and if that's the case, we know that during the Gorbachev, especially Yeltsin, the first term of President Putin, Russia is very proactive, trying to join the Europe, and tried at least 4 times to join NATO, for example, but being pushed back again and again. Gave you not only a cold shoulder, just slap your face, go back. So failed. That's how it turned around, like I said, 2008. But it's always puzzled me because when Germany just was reunified, I was in Berlin, I was in Paris, I talked to colleagues there, including Solona, remember him, is a secretary of NATO. He gave me the term that one of the mission of Europe in those years is to tame Russia, so Russia can be part of us. But I don't know why it never worked out. Russia is very willing, lean towards Europe. I want to join you. Again. Even in 2002, I remember in the Brest summit between Putin and George W. Bush, and President Putin said, we Russians do not see NATO as a hostile organization because we want to be part of it. But why the Europeans are so stubborn, so short-sighted to keep Russia out of the door?
Why they're so stupid? The answer is very simple, because they're extremely stupid. As simple as that. Second, Americans also were against that because they were afraid that if Russia becomes a member of European alliance, it would weaken American position.
Yes.
But I have persuaded Yeltsin personally to apply. He didn't apply formally, but informally applied.
Yeah.
For one reason, at that time, most of the Russian elite believed that we could become a member of the Western community. When we were rejected in 1994-95, I was absolutely appalled, and I started to think that they are preparing to deliver us a coup de grace because the offer was so generous. But then I saw that there was simply a sign of moral and intellectual degradation. And then simultaneously they started to support China rise. I mean, but now the situation is completely different. Now we are not a member willing or thinking about rejoining Europe.
Not at all. We are the Europe.
No, we are we are Northern Eurasia, a great power.
You said look, you're the first one to raise the issue, look east and go east, right?
Together with you. And now we are starting the second turn to the east, which is Siberization of Russia, and returning to our own real integrity and our own identity. Russia has been always, except for 300 years, a Eurasian power or even a nation power. Let me remind you on a few simple things which people do not want to think about. We took our religion and our philosophy and our religions came from the south. It's not from Europe. They from Palestine. Islam came from the Arab world. Buddhism came from even Eastern. Our political system, of course, we are the heirs of the Mongol Empire. It's absolutely clear. Then, of course, I mean, because of all kinds of reasons, we made a journey to Europe for 300 years. But now we are finishing it, and we will never be
going back to the roots.
Also, where to go? Europe used to be a developed, shining example. Now it is becoming a junkyard. We're not
going to take a junkyard.
Absolutely, but of course there are a lot of Russians still who are Euro-oriented because of the 300 years of Euro orientation. But we are drifting very fast towards a position of what we call state civilization, the same as China.
Yeah, I remember in 2011, 2012 about that club, and also in our project, you and me, two of us, said going east is a future for Russia. At that time, very few people believe us, but now I think that going east really is a future for Russia, and also good for China too, because China-Russia relationship.
Not only east,
cornerstone.
Not only east but south.
Go south.
To the south, because actually, as I've said, our spiritual connection.
Georgia, Kazakhstan, Central Asia.
Arab. We got Islam, and 20% of our population is Islamic.
Yeah.
The Arab world.
Arab world.
Yes, and from the Turkish world. And we got...
But do you think that Turkey will go along?
Turkey will have to go along if countries like...
Because it's a member of NATO, right?
Well, they're also a state civilization.
Yeah, okay.
So they are becoming independent. Yeah. And there will be a new balance in this part, in the Eurasia. China will be number one, but it will never be willing or be allowed to become a hegemon.
No, I think China will learn a lesson. We have to learn a lesson from the United States. Being a hegemon will be a disaster in the long run. I think Deng Xiaoping has a wisdom said.
So absolutely, if somebody changes his mind in China, China will, unlike the United States, will be surrounded by great powers. We should not allow it to become.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
I mean, China, China is unwilling, and I do not see any reason why China.
I think, from Mao Zedong to Deng Xiaoping, all the way to President Xi Jinping, I think one line is very clear, that China will never be a hegemon, right?
China could have become a hegemon in the world. Maybe it would have been better for the world if in the 14th, 15th century they wouldn't have burned their fleet. You wouldn't have burned your fleet.
I know, that the Ming Dynasty, I understand. But here I want to talk a little bit more Russia, and then we go back to another important issue about China and the US-China relationship. We know that Russia is very rich in natural resources, the richest. We know that. If you talk about the level of the richness of natural resources, Russia is far, far ahead of everyone. But we also know that Russia's economy needs to be recovered. Only 2% of the global economy by statistics. And if the Ukraine war ended, we also have a broken Ukraine. It's also on your shoulders. So Russia will shoulder two nations rebuilding. I cannot count Americans or Europeans to rebuild Ukraine. They're robbers. They only got to get what they want. Eventually, the Slavic brothers, the Russians, will have to do that, right? And you also have an economy that need to develop. If you want Russia to really rise up again to the stardom of global power, you got to have a very strong and prosperous economy. And how are you going to achieve that, given what's going on right now?
Well, first of all, this war, in spite of the losses, both economic and especially human, has rejuvenated Russian economy. We started at last to invest in science, technology. I mean, as you know, especially in the military-industrial complex, which is now the best in the world. We are investing in the right professions, engineers, not lawyers. Russia is morally resurrecting. It's unbelievable what has happened in the country, first. Second, we do not need to be a global economic power. What do we need is to be affluent, to be strong, and to control our own territory. That would provide.
And also has the ability of deterrence.
And ability of deterrence. That will provide for our global standing. And we do not want to go beyond our borders. So, and also in the future, in the world of the next 25 years, the military force will again start to play is already starting to play the decisive role in world affairs, and we are the country of warriors, as you know. So there are three elements in state power, or in the power of a person. One is intellect, moral power, or spiritual power. One is economic power, and one is military power. At one point, in the previous several decades, we believed that economy serves is number one. It is very close to Chinese mind because you are a country of merchants. But now you'll have to understand whether and I think you are starting to appreciate that being a country of even industrious workers and merchants is not enough. You have to be a first-class military power. And Russia will become the first class for the time being. And what happens in 15, 20 years, I do not know. Also, we have to develop our population. That's why I think that we should think about new type of development. Previously, we all developed according to the capitalist paradigm: profit, wealth. We reached a certain level of profitability and wealth, but then we are also reaching the limits of growth, because endless consumption is undermining the earth. So I think we should eventually it is also a challenge for us, for other countries, including China. We have to change the direction of our development. My judgment is that we should invest in the person, in people, in people, rather than in simple wealth. And so my advice for my country is invest in people and invest in military might, and with our resources we will be quite.
So you are going to keep your economy open after sanctions.
But open, self-open. Fortress Russia, open to friends, but not open to global trends. Because even you, though you are a very trade-dependent economy, are starting to feel...
You have to self-reliance, But I know we have discussed this about 10 or 20 years ago together. To really promote Russia's economy right now, you need money, capital, you need know-how, you need labor, you also need market. All of this quite be challenging, in my view. And I also hold my view, like when I began to work with you, Russia needs to promote a kind of international cooperation with other friendly countries.
Sure, absolutely.
But here goes to a very important question, and also let me be very blunt with you. I think Donald Trump really wants to end up this war. He really wants to normalize relationship with Russia. He really wants to reinvite Russia back to the global, especially Western community. He said Russia is rejoining the G7, right? And suppose that the war ended, the relationship between Russia and the United States normalized. What kind of relationship you think that Russia and the United States will have would be, in your idea, would be good one?
First of all, the United States will be living through a very long and stable period. It is better, now getting better, but it's still absolutely unreliable.
Unreliable now.
Second. Second, so there would be never a special access of Russia. And of course, when people are talking about Russia rejoining G7, it sounds like a joke.
It is a joke.
What? Whom? We're sorry. Then I think that our aim strategically would have correct relations with the United States. Friendly with China and friendly with India. These four countries should help the world to develop into the right direction. Already, as you know, even Trump started to think along these lines, though he's adding Japan in order to
divide.
Not to divide, just to put additional weight on his part of the scale. But in principle, even maybe Japan, but no Europe.
No Europe.
Never.
But Chinese will say no Japan, at least under the right.
Well, it will be a diplomatic process. You will say no Japan, I will say, oh, what about South Korea? We would say, why? And it will be a process. 4 is for sure.
But Japan right now, you know that I don't want to dwindle too long on this because to me it's obvious that Japanese leadership under Sinai Taikoshi tried to challenge the post-war order and try to poke into Chinese eyes, said Taiwan issue is about Japan is nonsense. Of course, I think it's legitimate, it's all right for China to put our pressure on her to make sure that kind of thinking will not prevail.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, if three countries, Russia, China, and United States, will continue the gradual drift toward each other, and by the way, United States are also becoming more realistic with China, then Taiwan sooner or later will rejoin China in one way or another.
In my view, that's a done deal already. I mean, it's nowhere to go, right?
Yes, so they have nowhere to go, and so, but we'll have to live through this 10-15 period of very rapid and even sometimes dangerous transition, avoiding a big war. But of course, I mean, this small fluctuations when the Japanese are trying to play the game of Taiwan against China, they sound like a joke. I mean, how come? I mean, it's simply, it is simply maneuvering. But historically, Japan will be there. Probably, eventually, it could become more of a status quo power, overcome the feeling of being defeated and not acknowledging it. But I think that in the Far East or in Eastern Asia, there could be stable, balanced, eventually achieved with North Korea nuclearized. Even, I don't know, I know the Chinese wouldn't like that. Even South Korea nuclearized, so they would block each other.
Yeah.
And South Korea will be less dependent on the United States, and we will in a way threaten Japan, and there'll be a more balanced relationship, because Japan is a threat to South Korea too, as you know, to everybody.
I agree with you. I think to keep this area to prevent nuclear proliferation in the Northeast Asia is very important. But for time's sake, I want to give you the final question, is that you just said, which I agree, that China and Russia should help United States to prevent a disorderly decline. And there is a line which I raise here in China, is that only China can save Donald Trump. And of course, it serves China's interest to make sure United States will not get into a turmoil situation, we're stable and prosperous. That's my view. And in that regard, from what you see, how do you think about U.S.-China relationship? To what extent the two countries should get along? Because Donald Trump even said we want G2, which of course China has not accepted.
Well, first of all, I mean, G2 was, as you remember, a brilliant idea of two former friends of mine, of Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski, who both hated each other. But they agreed that that should be G2.
Yes.
But American elite rejected that, and then Chinese, for all kind of reasons, also because the Chinese at that time were weak. They would be the weaker part of the G2.
They don't want to be a little brother.
Yeah, they would be a little brother. But now, if we are moving towards a new configuration of, say, Big Four, then the Chinese will be not the dominant, but probably the leading of the four, or maybe one of the leaders. We will be, it will be a group of leaders, and objectively, sooner or later, I hope, United States will adjust to the understanding that it is not there global power, that it has to share responsibility and not with others, and they are moving in that direction. But it will take time. The next 15, 20 years, it will be very hard. We'll need very hard work on the diplomatic, political level, and on the level of deterrence. So we would not slip into a big war because there are many destabilizing forces. If not, we will have a much more stable world order in 20 years with 4, maybe 5, whatever, big global powers with a new set of organizations, with juvenilized UN, moved from New York to Abu Dhabi, or something, because UN is one of the main problems of the UN, which should be kept, is that it is overwhelmed by Western-oriented and Western bureaucracy.
So the UN should move to Abu Dhabi or Dubai?
Maybe some officers will stay in New York. So it should be dispersed according to the new world order, and we will have we will build up BRICS. Will build up special agencies within BRICS and Shanghai Organization, which double some of the institutions or substitute, but first double some of the institutions of the UN, which are not effective anymore because of the distrust of big powers first, and second because the biggest problem of UN is the domination of the Secretariat by Western-oriented bureaucracy. And then we will have a much more comfortable world, multipolar, multicultural, multi-religious, and a kaleidoscope. As some of my friends say, sarafan. Sarafan is a dress of, is a famous dress of Eurasian women, which is, some of the Chinese women also dress. So with a lot of colors, with a lot of pieces, etc., but beautiful.
But I understand you said maybe you have a big force, Russia, China, United States, India can manage the situation, but we have a lot, I think it's a long way to go. First and foremost, of course, we're United States, for example, or India, in that will accept this kind of arrangement. Secondly, we do have totally different, if not confrontational international organizations still existing. On this side, we have BRICS, Shanghai Organization, Commonwealth or Common Security. On that side, we still have NATO, have EU, European Union, G7.
European Union will be dissolving. G7 is already done. So it will be G4, G5, whatever it will be. Of course, it could continue for a while, but it is done away with already. Then the main. We are actually the main task of building the new world is a Russian-Chinese task. If we keep for the next decades our close relationship together, everybody will have to adapt to that.
Okay, so that's the cornerstone.
That is the core. For that, we will be not. It will not be an axis because it will not against. It will be a cornerstone on which the new system will be built, with the help of which the new system will be built. So, one of the greatest mistakes, but also blessings of the Americans, but also the blessing of the Almighty, was that instead of dividing us too, and we could have been divided at certain points where they brought us, help us to bring us together, and we are now real friends and real strategic partners, and we are the stabilizing force of the world, and we both in a close relationship are absolutely unbeatable. Nobody could challenge us.
Yes.
If we are divided, then we have a problem. If we are together, and we are not threatening United States or India, etc., etc. Of course, we have all kinds of problems. Then we are unbeatable, and then everybody will have to
work with us.
Work with us. So that's it. That's it, and it is a problem for Russia and China. I must say that's a unique and fantastic possibility. So that's why I'm so happy that we have started the Eastern Turn 17 years ago, and now we're again arranging the next Eastern Turn, which is called Cyberization in Russia, and that is moving the center of gravity of spiritual, then economic, and even certain political gravity towards Siberia and towards Asia.
Thank you so much, Sergey. We finally see some real result for the work we started almost 20 years ago. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And yes, again, thank you so much, Dr. Karakanov. Always insightful, deep, and we agree with each other that the U.S. alliance system is collapsing, gone. And so also U.S. global hegemony.
Be generous. Dissolving.
Dissolving. So it's gone, the U.S. global hegemony is there. So we also agree that as a responsible great power, China and Russia should help United States prevent a disorderly decline. This kind of attack on Venezuela is not a show of strength, but a show of weakness, which is very dangerous. And again, I also agree with you that as long as Russians and Chinese can stand together, work with each other, and we're going to have the fundamental guarantee for global peace and stability. That's really key, right?
It is fantastic. I think the divine forces have helped us to get together finally.
Great.
Because, I mean, we were friends, sometimes we were competitors, but now history is bringing us together and we are natural.
Yeah, one thing I think is that if we look at today's Chinese policy or Chinese leadership, it is very clear. China will not get into the old track of the United States, become the so-called hegemon. China is trying to build up a community of human race with a shared future. China try to promote global peace and stability and growth. Of course, I do believe Russia will play a more important role, even though we still have Ukraine war there.
On the way, it will not be only geopolitical problems which we have to solve, because we have to try to lead the world in solving, in dealing with the climate change, which is inevitable. And it's not only due to the work of the humans. And also we have to think together how to adapt our social economic systems. The social economic systems which we adhere to are based on endless consumption. And that is, of course, I mean, you are a poor country, we are not not a rich country, and so, if we continue to eat resources and undermine the basis of our life, the planet, that will be a mistake. We have to come forward with a new philosophy of development. I mean, and from my point of view, it is development of the person, of the human, but of the human not in the Western sense, not individual, but of human who serves his family, his community, his country, and the world, and the God, if he or she believes in.
Yeah, this leads to the conclusion I really want to make. We know that after industrialization in the past 300 years, industrialization, of course, has brought us a great sense like economic development, civilization, so on and so forth. All of this thanks to industrialization, but also brought us some very ugly, bloody sense like imperialism, colonialism, and wars, war after wars. I hope this is the beginning that we human beings really learned from our tragedy before and get into a new area that people working for peace, to prevent wars. I do believe Russia and China will play a very critical role in that direction.
Yes, and our intellectual communities should work together much more intensively, like we do.
Thank you so much. We've been working together for 20 years, and we're always good comradeship is established, and also brotherhood. Thank you. I'm so glad
Thank
to
you.
see you.
It was a great pleasure.
I hope we can continue this.
Absolutely, no question about that.
Thank you.